Bienvenue, bonjour tout le monde. Thank you everyone for coming to the 33rd event of Disrupting Disruptions, the Feminist and Accessible Publishing, Communications, and Technologies Practices Speaker and Workshop Series. I'm Dr. Alex Ketchum, and I'm a professor of Feminist and Social Justice Studies at McGill and the organizer of this series. The Feminist and Accessible Publishing, Communications, and Technologies Practices Speaker and Workshop Series seeks to bring together scholars, creators, and people in industry working at the intersections of digital humanities, computer science, feminist studies, disability studies, communication studies, LGBTQ studies, history, and critical race theory. We are hosting 12 free virtual and professionally captioned events this winter, and you're welcome to join us at all of them. You can find our full schedule as well as video recordings of past events at disruptingdisruptions.com. That's the redirect URL. You can also find our list of sponsors, including Shirk, Milieu, and the Indigenous Futures Lab on our website. While events typically happen on Wednesdays, we are excited to host Chancey Fleet tomorrow night at 7 p.m. speaking about accessibility and technology. The talk's entitled Digital Frictions and Dark Patterns in Accessible Technology. Next Wednesday, Anna Brandusco is speaking about funding AI in Canada, public investments, and private interests. And on March 3rd, Hione Mahalona and Peter Lucas Jones will be speaking about Indigenous data sovereignty. Past speakers through this series, Suzanne Kite and Jess McLean, have pointed to the physical and material impacts of the digital world. While the events this semester are virtual, everything that we do is tied to the land and the space that we are on. Furthermore, as the series seeks to draw attention to power relations that have been invisibilized, it is important to acknowledge Canada's long colonial history and current political practices. This series is affiliated with the Institute for Gender, Sexuality, and Feminist Studies of McGill University. We are currently located in Tiohtià:ke, Montreal, on unceded Kanien'kehá:ka territory. Furthermore, the ongoing organizing efforts by the Wet'suwet'en people at the Unistoten camp make clear the ever-present and ongoing colonial violence in Canada, as well as other protests in Canada that are currently ongoing. Interwoven with this history of colonization is one of enslavement and racism. This university's namesake, James McGill, enslaved Black and Indigenous peoples. It was in part from the money he acquired through these violent acts that McGill University was founded. These histories are here with us in this space and inform the conversations we have today. I encourage you to learn about the lands that you are on. nativeland.ca is a fantastic resource for doing so. The series was made possible thanks to our many funders. A special thanks to Shirk, the IGSF, Milieu, the Indigenous Futures Lab, the Intersectionality Research Hub, Mila, the Black Feminist Futures Working Group, Cinema Politica, and more. Thank you for today's captionist, Debbie, and the video afterwards will also be we'll have professional captioning. For this event, recording is enabled so that the event can be embedded on our website. Don't worry, only the speakers will be shown in the video. We also have a Q&A option available below. So throughout the talk, you may type your questions in the Q&A box, and there will be some time at the end for Caroline to answer them. We can't guarantee that every question will be answered, but we are grateful to the discussion that you generate. Now for today's event. I now have the pleasure of introducing Caroline Cinders. Caroline Cinders is a machine learning design researcher and artist. For the past few years, she has been examining the intersections of technology's impact in society, interface design, artificial intelligence, abuse, and politics in digital conversational spaces. Cinders is the founder of Convocation Design and Research, an agency focusing on the intersections of machine learning, user research, designing for public good, and solving difficult communication problems. As a designer and researcher, she has worked with Amnesty International, Intel, IBM Watson, the Wikimedia Foundation, and others. Cinders has held fellowships with the Harvard Kennedy School, the Mozilla Foundation, Yerba Buena Center for the Arts, IBEAM, Studio for Creative Inquiry, and the International Center of Photography, and much, much more. Thank you everyone for participating, and please join me in welcoming Caroline Cinders.
Hi everyone, thank you so much for having me. It's a real honor to be here. I'm excited to talk a little bit about some of my work and be able to engage in conversation with you. So I will share my screen. Oh, no, this one. Oh, sorry. There we go. Great. So I'm going to talk a little bit about my practice, which is combining research, design, and art, and looking at research-driven art and how art can sort of be a vehicle for creating new imaginaries and thinking through more equitable-based technology. So I'm Caroline. I guess a rough way to summarize what I do is I study people on the internet. I'm an artist and researcher, and I work at the intersections of civil society and the private sector. And I look mainly at the impacts of technology in society and how it affects different groups of people, especially people from marginalized backgrounds. I've held residencies with BuzzFeed and IBEAM, PioneerWorks, the Mozilla Foundation, and Harvard. And I currently sit on a working group with the United Nations on data privacy and children. And I'm an artist in residence with Ars Electronica's AI Lab. And my background is actually a pretty interdisciplinary one. My background is in photojournalism, research, design, and art. And I see everything through the lens of legibility and research-based storytelling. And these are skills I honed as a photojournalist. And with these skills, I make art and I do human rights research. And again, I'm focusing through the lens of how design and technology affects people in their everyday lives. So what is research-driven art? It's just how I define my practice. It's art that is shaped and driven by research, be it quantitative or qualitative. I don't really make data visualizations, but I could inside of research-driven art. But the way to think about it is, what if you made net art or technology-based art but with the same principles of photojournalism? Like photojournalism, research-driven art uses specific structures and a sense of purpose to constrain it. These constraints work much like how a skeleton works. While they stabilize the practice just as a rib cage stabilizes the body, they do not define the entire practice, nor keep it from moving and flexing on its own. And this way, the research I do stabilizes and shapes my art, but it does not dictate what the outcome is of my art. In late May, after the United States erupted in protest for Black Lives Matter and after George Floyd's death, I saw a number of curators and critics remark on social networks about how tech artists, read white and male tech artists, and what their roles were in unpacking technology, injustice, and activism through art. And I was really curious about this. And over email, I reached out to a friend who's a curator and writer named Nora Khan. And we talked about artistic practices during moments of cultural upheaval. In this email, Nora said to me, how might critical technological work be called on in this moment to do more? Coded design work has that capacity. Hybrid research practices can explain and expose the logics of racial capitalism, but under the auspices of artistic collaboration, can enact critique and make an argument through processes and through a built system, end quote. And I'm struck by this idea of usefulness. And the idea of usefulness inside of interdisciplinary work is a key and necessary part of a research-driven arts practice. And it is directly and extremely inspired by the work of Tanya Bruguera's arte utile methodology, which means utilitarian art. Arte utile draws on artistic thinking to imagine, create, and implement tactics that change how we act in society, again, heavily focused on usefulness and on tool building and on communities. Nora highlighted the strengths of work stretching across domain, making art this necessary Trojan horse to discuss useful change in our email exchange. This is where I turn to the work of American artists whose piece, My Blue Window, you see here. This is where I turn to the work of American artists Frances Singh, Joanna Mull, Adam Harvey, Mimi Onawa, forensic architecture, and others. These artists are pulling from research or investigatory-based practices with work that manifests into a variety of outputs, artifacts, writings, and education. The practices of American artists, or the anonymous group behind ScanMap, a website that is scanning police trackers and scanners and sharing it with the general public, are great examples of social justice and human rights-driven art, with ScanMap's work tracking police scanners or Americans artists, I'm Blue If I Was Blank I Would Die, and My Blue Window You See Here. Two pieces that comment on the structure and violence of modern police forces. Other examples of social justice, research, and artistic practices are works like The Hidden Life of an Amazon User by Joanna Mull or Adam Harvey's V-Frame research, which you see here, which came out of his numerous collaborations with the human rights archiving group, the Syrian Archive, which is documenting the current atrocities in Syria by grabbing images and posts from social media by those who are on the ground documenting what is happening. We also see this in the investigative work of forensic architecture, with who Harvey has also collaborated with using VFrame. One example of a research and social justice-based art practice is Mimi Onowaz. Onowaz's research work on the politics and injustices of data sets have resulted in artworks like the Library of Missing Data Sets and the widely cited and canonical zine and educational tool, The People's Guide to AI, co-written with Diana J. Nucera. These pieces and artists occupy a liminal space of research, journalism, and art. But why design? Why is this something I turn back to and focus on? Because everything around us is designed, from how we entered the Zoom meeting today to why we can or can't block people on Slack. We cannot, but we should be able to how information is presented to us on Twitter and how the world then physically surrounds us. This slide is a cheeky nod to Don Norman, one of the godfathers of modern design, and the design of everyday objects. But effectively in the design world, we assume that design is universal, seamless, and intuitive, and it is not. In some cases, like the design of these doors, design makes objects appear that they function one way when they do not. But even further, why does design matter when we talk about things like algorithms, artificial intelligence, recommendation systems, or just technology writ large? Because design is an equalizing action that distills code and policy into understandable interfaces. Design can elevate and obfuscate. Design isn't just a skill, but a practice and a language in and of itself. To start solving problems around complex issues, but also creating spaces for human connection, design needs to be at the equal forefront of this conversation when we talk about correcting or fixing or adding equity into technology. It's not just how we write code, it's also how we interact with where the code is placed, and that is design. Design is what is distilling code and policy into digestible and interactive interfaces for users. Design is the thing that explains what code and policy are outlining and doing. For issues like labor, harassment, security, and privacy, design is extremely important. And how does design translate into policy and into technology? Well, online harassment reporting, like you see here, is a really great example. Users don't have to deeply understand a social network's policy on harassment in order to report it. Design takes the technical infrastructure, the ability to select a piece of content, to click on it, and then click what kind of harassment it is, as well as the political infrastructure, the policies behind what are the kinds of harassment or harm that content falls into, describing the platform policy in a way that is short and understandable to all users, and then folds all those processes into product design, the reporting system. So a user doesn't have to be an expert in understanding security to be able to report something like harassment, or even a technical or political expert to understand the policy. Security settings are another example, right? So for users to report content or change their security settings, they shouldn't have to be a lawyer. To adjust security settings, you shouldn't have to be an engineer who has a background in security. Design helps make these complexities understandable to everyday people, to all of us. And design affects things like policy. For example, when we look at areas like dark patterns. Dark patterns are design patterns that unintentionally or intentionally trick and manipulate users into making decisions they wouldn't normally make. And dark patterns have been focused on in the larger general press publications recently, even though designers have known about dark patterns for years. I've been doing a lot of research recently on dark patterns and collaborating with different policy regulators and researchers. Some policy researchers have pointed out that the recent popularity of focus on dark patterns could be because dark patterns have started to cause much more serious, widespread damage. For instance, when filing taxes, like we saw with ProPublica's research on TurboTax, or the implementations of the European Union's General Data Protection Regulation, known as the GDPR. And I just want to show you a dark pattern in GDPR really quickly. This is one I've noticed. I've been documenting dark patterns since 2019 in GDPR interstitials, and this is one. So this is what it looks like when this was, I think, taken in May 2020 for Harper's Bazaar UK. What you see here are two settings. You have accept all cookies and cookie settings. What do you see here? It's that the consent button is actually hidden underneath cookie settings. This is a dark pattern because these are clearly legible as three different choices, whereas this, the thing you first see, just looks like two choices. So the consent button is hidden under these multiple steps, and this is a dark pattern. So again, why design? Can a door be political? Yes. Can it be art? Well, perhaps. What does art do? It transports us. It's poetic. It analogizes, creates metaphors, creates artifacts of visual interpretation of our everyday lives, and elevates it to a different space. It is not necessarily direct or didactic. It is different from design, or rather, it aims to achieve different things. How can design be art? Traditionally, from a United States design sense, design is useful, but is also profitable. I'm from the US and was taught that design meant objects and utterly usefulness and things that can be purchased. But design is so much more than that. Design affects us in so many more ways. But how can design be something that is explorative, speculative, and poetic, and still critique and comment on this moment? And this is where I turn to the work of critical design. Critical design is design that addresses the limitations of product design. Critical design was a term coined in 1997 by Anthony Doon, and it comes from a practice he developed with Fiona Raby when they were research fellows at the Royal College of Art in the United Kingdom. Critical design as a practice is one among a growing number of approaches that aims to prevent and define interrogative, discursive, and experimental approaches in design practice and research. Critical design demands that design stop existing in terms of capitalist production, which is a function of product design, and push product design towards self-examination and cultural critique. Doon and Raby highlight that by acknowledging that the design process needs to mature and find ways of operating outside the tight constraints of servicing industry. At its worst, product design simply reinforces capitalist values. Design needs to be seen for what it is, just one possibility, and to develop alternative roles for itself. It needs to establish an intellectual stance of its own, or the design profession is destined to lose all intellectual credibility and be viewed simply as an agent of capitalism. By defining how product design can be created, critical design also creates new ways for an audience to engage with design and understand all the different facets of design in their everyday lives. With the aforementioned works such as Doon and Raby, Mimi Onoa, Adam Harvey, and Forensic Architecture, American Artist, all these can be viewed as art or as research, but are much more richly viewed when viewed as research-based artistic activist practices, and including critical design in that mix. So in this context, design and art are the same for me. These works aren't just to bear witness, though that alone would be worthwhile. They question, provocate, and offer a solution to a problem. They should not be viewed as a form of techno-solutionism. However, the solutions the artists provide are not meant to create an end-all be-all to all other potentials. Rather, they serve to offer temporary or open source fixes for gaps in equity and violence created by society and are thus poetic witnesses of those gaps. This kind of band-aid is in a similar space where I pursue my own practice. Band-aids exist as necessary provocations or patches, while participatory design and deconstruction with artists, human rights researchers, activists, technologists, and communities can overhaul the system or destroy systems together. The togetherness and collaboration is key, though, but nonetheless, provocations within art and design can create new imaginaries and new realities. I'd like to quickly show you some projects and explain where they came from. One art project, Social Media Breakup Coordinator, comes out of my 8 years of studying online harassment and how systems create harassment. I look at the affordances of technology. Do UX and UI decisions mitigate harassment? Can they amplify it? And I think that they can. Think about if you're being harassed. What does the system allow you to do? What can you do to create safety in that space? And can you actually be safe? Some of my research focuses on harassment of everyday users and then journalists who can face really large threats like governmental censorship or surveillance, all the way down to what we can think of as more regular harassment, such as frequent but random harassment done by strangers online or harassment campaigns. This research work of mine has been supported by different organizations like Harvard and the Open Technology Fund. And within this research, it inspires art as well. Social media breakup coordinator comes out of this space of research, of spending a lot of time of studying how content moves online, what we can do to react or stop it. And in the case of harassment, how to relate to being online, of how do we as a society respond to being online, these really structured design spaces. What are the new kinds of anxieties and tensions that come up? For a lot of victims, for example, regardless of technical background or job, because this is something I hear journalists say a lot, they feel like they shouldn't be upset by what is said to them online, but you should be. It's okay to be hurt and affected by someone calling you dumb or sending you something as horrifying as a rape threat. That is supposed to hurt. So, as a researcher, I look at these anxieties, and as an artist, I create explorations or interventions around them. Social Media Breakup Coordinator is a performance art piece that explores the very intertwined and interconnections of our online and offline lives. The piece has gone through 3 iterations since 2015. I'm exploring the connections between our digital tools and our and human intervention. Where do algorithms fail and humans must intervene? As users of social media, people live their most beautiful and angry and complex and complicated lives online. So I've been exploring what could be a series of different solutions following someone having some kind of problem online, and then how to coordinate solving that problem, a la the way a therapist or a social media coordinator for an ad agency would handle someone's account following any kind of messy interaction or uncoupling with algorithmic combinations that looking at how tools overlap in people's lives. Like an algorithm, I'm creating a series of solutions that can be combined for a variety of situations, following things like one night stands, a best friend breakup, ending abusive relationships, ghosting, what to do when an annoying coworker friends you online, as well as a myriad of other things. Every participant sitting with me as the coordinator signs a legally binding document drafted by my collaborator, Fred Jennings, who is a lawyer. This outlines that I am not a therapist and not held liable for damages. Then users fill out a 21-point user quiz, which I prescribe answers out of an algorithm I've handwritten with less than 40 suggestions. Those suggestions can be puzzle pieced together, which leaves the user feeling like they're receiving highly personal advice when in fact it is algorithmically generated. Social Media Breakup Coordinator is also a comment about the US's lack of healthcare and mental health support, as well as the growing gig economy. For this project, I'm effectively a gig economy therapist, as well as a digital security trainer and advice giver. So for a few dollars and 15 minutes, people fill out this survey and I give them real feedback. While it initially started off as algorithmic feedback, me mimicking a real life chatbot, it has now actually turned into just a short feedback session. And then with the feedback and the questions and the interactions, this is all pulled from my very real research of seeing the general anxieties people have about being online. It's exploring this idea of expendable help and how anxiety about the internet isn't really taken seriously, but it should be. And then through this, I've created a series of public data sets about these anxieties. In February 2019, I took over Baby Castles, where we had hosted the first social media breakup coordinator in 2015, to host an entire month of social media breakup coordinator with new artwork, a video game arcade, and weekly talks featuring Faye Liu, Pamela Lau, Jacqueline Mabey, Charles Bukowski, Molly Soda, as well as others. The games themselves, combined with talks and performances, were all mediations on the problems and anxieties within social media. We created a moving wall algorithm projected on a wall, inspired by our workshops at the end of the exhibit, all while still holding social media breakup coordinator sessions, which you see here. I also curated a series of posters and art pieces on disconnecting with technology and social media from artists and researchers like Sadet Harry, Merritt Kay, Helen Shewell Singh, Salomea Siga, and myself. And this is me in session at Baby Castles. Later in December 2019, I won a residency with Academy/Solitude, and I created a critical design chatbot with Alex Fafagea of Kamuzi Labs. The bot is designed to respond to questions and care for a victim of online harassment, as well as a series of open source best practices and guides on what to do when facing a variety of online harassment. This bot is an extension of Social Media Breakup Coordinator. The bot also tells the user that it shouldn't exist, but it does exist to fill this void created by platforms. With the help and feedback of the bot, it is providing actual It's providing actual care that a real person should be providing, and that trained professionals on these platforms should be providing this care, but they don't. So because that kind of help infrastructure doesn't exist, the bot does exist to help victims. So my work likes to play with this line of being useful, but also highlight deeper issues at play. Here's another project of mine called Higher Resolution, which ran for 2 weeks in September 2019 and used interactive artwork, talks from international technology experts, and hands-on workshops to examine the state of power and privacy online, from widespread surveillance to how AI is shaping human culture and relationships to the threats of emerging technology. So with Hyphen Labs, we were the lead artists for the Tate Modern State Exchange and created this takeover. We had artists and speakers hail from Amnesty International, Change.org, the BBC, Carnegie Trust, as well as other international organizations. One of the main reasons I was so excited to work with Hyphen Labs was this ability to bring in policy researchers, political activists, and watchdog groups directly into our artistic collaboration. It's important when creating activist and social justice works as artists to avoid replicating unintentionally work done by activists or researchers out in the field. Instead, we should work directly with those activists. When fighting data surveillance, the way to create change is to work together and create levers of pressure in the public, and arts institutions are a necessary part of that lever. We need to avoid creating work alone only in the space of art, and we should seek collaboration with other artists and researchers who are working on identical or similar causes. The 2 weeks of programming unfolded in a unique physical space designed to mimic the different layers of privacy we toggle between online, as well as a floor schematic highlighting privacy concerns in our everyday lives. The metaphors are the town hall, an analog to Twitter being the most public, the park bench, an analog of Facebook being a place of semi-publicness, the living room, an analog of WhatsApp being more intimate and private, and the lure, the bedroom, an analog of intimate text conversations. There's also art installations that highlight the perils of modern technology like facial recognition, website tracking, and harmful content recommendation. The following images display a participant voting on a feature to ban tear off truisms describing surveillance capitalism. The goal of this project was to bring the conversations of privacy with policymakers into the white cube space and to transform these conversations and make them more actionable and tangible for museum goers. How often does the lead of an advocacy campaign get to engage face-to-face with people who sign their campaigns or engage with arts organizers? Not very frequently. Another example of research-driven art and social justice arts project is Feminist Dataset, which started in 2017 as a response to the many documented cases of problems in technology and bias in machine learning. It is a critical research and art project that examines bias in machine learning through data collection, data training, neural networks, and new form of user interface, as well as the projected creation of a feminist artificial intelligence chatbot system. The project is inspired by the work of the Maker Movement, Critical Design, Arte Utile, the Critical Engineering Manifesto, Xenofeminism, and the feminist principles of the internet. So Feminist Dataset is this multi-year project using intersectional feminism as a framework for investigating machine learning. It's trans-inclusive and focusing on racial justice. It's extremely process-driven, so the outputs of the project or the artifacts are workshops on data and machine learning, and not necessarily what you think of as traditional art outputs. The workshops here are key since they are a mechanism to think through what community-driven, equitable data collection could look like. In these workshops, we discuss what is intersectional data and what does it mean. We talk about Professor Kimberly Crenshaw's work, the creator of the term intersectionality. We also unpack intersectionality in writing. For example, like what that could look like. So for example, take an article about income inequality. An intersectional article would highlight that white women, Black women, Indigenous women, Latinx women, and trans folks of different races are all paid different amounts. So an article that simply states that all women are paid less views women as a monolith and is not intersectional and cannot be in the data set. Within our workshops, community members then research and submit written data, be it poems, text, blog, transcripts of conversations, whatever, as long as it is something that is in text form. The only time my hand as the creator appears is to remove non-intersectional data, and I'm extremely firm about this. Racists and TERFs need not apply. The feminist dataset operates in a similar vein to Thomas Thwaites' toaster project, which you see here, which is a critical design project in which Thwaites builds a commercial toaster from scratch, from melting iron ore to building circuits to creating a new plastic toaster body mold. Feminist dataset, however, takes a critical and artistic view on software and particularly machine learning. What does it mean to thoughtfully make with machine learning, to carefully consider every angle of making, iterating, and designing? Every step of this process needs to be thoroughly re-examined through a feminist lens. Unlike Thwaites' toaster, every step has to actually work. But I also show this image because it's a really great metaphor physically of what I'm building with software. My data model will probably be as misshapen as Thwaites' toaster. But the point of the project is to say, can you build technology with feminist ideals or feminist values, and what does it look like? And because I'm rebuilding every step of this pipeline, it's going to be imperfect. And that's the point of this process-driven work. It's not so much that the output itself be perfect, but rather look at the process of making it. For example, and we'll get into this later in the talk, I've been looking at data structures and data labeling and data training. And usually what people use in machine learning is Amazon's Mechanical Turk, which is, a like robust platform that is built with some of the, it's designed to work. It's a working product. And if I'm building a variation of that, I'm building something that maybe doesn't have the industrial scale of something of Amazon. This is where I think it's important to sort of look at Thwaites' toaster and say, what is the process of making? And what kind of comment does it have when we look at perhaps the size and scale of how products or technology is made behind machine learning? So how does a company make an algorithmic model that's open as an API? And can we see the criticality within that? Here's an image from when Feminist Dataset was installed at the Victoria and Albert Museum and the Artificially Intelligent exhibition. So this brings us to one of my current projects, which I was briefly mentioning earlier. This is called TRK, or Technically Responsible Knowledge, which is an open source project that examines wage inequality and creates open source alternatives to data labeling and training in AI. This is part of the Feminist Dataset project. It's the next step, which is focusing on data labeling and the systemic issues around invisibility and the creation of maintaining data structures and training data algorithmic models. TRK was funded by the Mozilla Foundation and was created with Cade Diem, Ian Arnaud Fuma, and Rainbow Unicorn. Over 2019, I interviewed research labs, artists, and startups who use Mechanical Turk style services, and microservice workers across Crowdflower, Fiverr, and Mechanical Turk. I even became a Mechanical Turker myself for a few weeks. TRK is this alternative open source tool for dataset training and labeling, which is a time-consuming but integral aspect of machine learning that must be completed in part by a human. The tool offers a wage calculator to help visualize a livable wage to those that will then be responsible for completing the tasks. As an artist and researcher who uses AI as a material to explore and make art, I was struck by how many startups, research labs, and artists use Mechanical Turk style platforms without any thought given to the payment structure for workers on the network. Mechanical Turk and similar platforms have had well-documented cases of horrendous worker-related issues, such as severely underpaying contracts. In many instances, even if a lab or individual is trying to price equitably, the interface of Mechanical Turk works against it. If the machine learning pipeline is death by 1,000 cuts, then think of TRK as one band-aid for one small cut. The project doesn't propose a solution for all issues related to machine learning or even a major one for Amazon's Mechanical Turk. So many issues related to machine learning are issues of a deeper, more ingrained societal inequity, which can only be addressed through large shifts and restructuring in society or through things like legislation. But within that, as a designer and researcher, I try to look at what kinds of research or work can help alleviate or expose those issues. TRK focuses on how, through pricing structures, platform incentives, and the invisible nature of gig work, clients underprice, undervalue, and fundamentally misunderstand how tasks are handled in these human-as-a-service platforms. Part of the design thinking behind TRK is to examine inequity and transparency within interfaces in the design of tools, and what kinds of problems tool design, UX, and UI create in technology. Inspired by the paper, Data Sheets for Data Sets, TRK injects plain text information into the data set with information that includes a description of what the data set is, when it was made, who made it, and why. UX or user experience design is a utilitarian intelligence focusing on architectural layouts, usability, and user flows, but design has a politics to it. It can suppress or uplift content. Design, much like technology, isn't neutral. As an artist, I use design as a material to confront and comment on the slickness and inequity of for-profit technologies. I'm an artist that deals with hardship, or rather with the hardness of technology, and then the trauma technology creates, and then the trauma and violence of others inside of these platforms. Sometimes the tools I use don't quite work well. So what if I could make them better? An interface is useful and expressive. I say this to you as an American who lives in Europe, but I've noticed culturally how the United States relates to design as an artistic medium versus Europe. How design is not necessarily viewed as an artistic practice in the US. So I encourage us to reflect back on critical design. Again, the methodology of removing capitalism from the structure of design. Design can be a tool, much like technology, and much like art, to create political and small acts of resistance and change. What kinds of design can we make when we stop viewing it through a Western and Silicon Valley, neoliberal, and extremely capitalist lens? We've seen code and art made without the constraints of capitalism. It's time for design to do that as well. Critical design, social justice, and design justice are needed now more than ever for tool making, for design to confront how it's perpetuated white supremacy and to change its relationships to power. Design can be an actuator for change, but design alone is not an entire solution towards injustice in society and technology. Design can confront a problem while acknowledging that it is part of the problem. Design can help visualize or highlight parts of systemic injustice, but design must confront and unpack its role in contributing to injustice in technology, especially technology in Silicon Valley. So I use design as an artistic practice and lever to create the usefulness to explore problem solving. Similar like the anonymous programmers behind ScanMap try to provide a solution for surveilling the police, design can sit in a space to solve small problems that are a part of bigger spaces and bigger issues. My approach to design thinking proposes a decommodification of art and situates it as a process and investigation. Artistic approaches to problems allow for collaborations that might not happen in other fields, and this way, art's role in social justice and human rights projects makes space for new kinds of work in a way that other fields traditionally could not let those projects exist. What does change look like? It has to be interdisciplinary across many fields of art, activism, policy, and social justice working together and not separately. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate all of you being here. If you'd love to chat or send me a note, please feel free. This is my email. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for that wonderful presentation. It was so great to hear more about your recent projects. I just want to say that the students in my feminist tech and futurities class read your feminist data set and your care and like interacted with your care projects, and they really enjoyed it.
Oh, thank
Um,
you.
I just want to say to everyone who's attending, remember that you can use the Q&A box to ask any questions, and we'll do our best to get to them. We already have one question from Aaron or Aaron. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name. So this attendee asks, first of all, they said they are loving the presentation, and they're especially especially the discussion of how design choices foreshadow certain social orders. So they ask, in reforming digital tools, what role do you think we users play, either individually or collectively?
Wow, that is such a good question. Thank you so much for asking that. I think users can play a really big role in sort of demanding what they would like to see. If you like coworker.org allows people to create what are they called, petitions. I've created one for Slack to add a block button, but even in like open source tools, for example, with Signal, you can always file like open up GitHub and file a request for something. So I think there are there's just such a big role we can play in terms of organizing ourselves and creating um, or demanding the changes we'd like to see. I do know that even though it seems like social networks often don't take our considerations to heart, they are affected by bad press and they do listen to that. How fast they listen to it is another thing entirely.
So again, I welcome people to continue to ask questions. I guess in the meantime, I will ask another question about your presentation. So one thing I really love about your work is how much you point to the role of the human in design, right? Both the way that the human is hidden, and then also when we need the human. And so I guess I wonder about where you see kind of your ideal in terms of design and the role of humans in it. Because I don't want to say that you seem to have like a techno solutionist approach, but it doesn't quite seem like you're a techno pessimist. So I'm kind of wondering how you kind of view your own outlook towards technology in your
Sure.
practice.
I really appreciate that question. Um, I much like so I this is where I like the term band-aid. So a band-aid, if you're bleeding really heavily, is not going to solve anything. And in some cases, a band-aid is something you can only have for a short period of time until you must really address the problem. Um, I'm a bit of a technology optimist, but in the sense of that, I see this as a space for exploring what I would like to see in the world. And so with like TRK, for example, one of the big things about that project that I would love to see even a small bit of change from big platforms on is either them creating governance structures to ensure fair pay or ways to calculate time and enforce how long time takes. And by enforcing it, I mean on the client side. So if a client is pricing tasks on Mechanical Turk, they aren't supposed to price below a certain amount, but they often do because the interface itself isn't catching that, right? So I am like the point of the project with the wage calculator is to encourage people to realize how much time matters when you're doing something. So for example, if I were to offer any of you, let's say like $20 to do something for me, that's either a really great deal depending upon how long it takes or a really shitty deal depending upon how long it takes. So time is this really integral aspect in terms of thinking how equitable something is. It's not the only aspect, right? Because you have to look at the content of what you're doing. But in this case, as an artist and a creator, I'm interested in looking at all of these small places where design can alleviate pain or pain points as much as possible. I don't think the world necessarily gets, perfect or even that much better when we make these small changes, but it does make it better. I think the thing to highlight is I'm also coming at this from the space of having studied online harassment, where there are just very basic things we need in terms to create a more safer internet for people. And a lot of that is better privacy filters, right? And so imagine, I mean, I'm sure I can't see any of you, so I can't see who you are or what you look like. But you know, in 2014, when the conversation got really heavy in North America about online harassment because of the Gamergate campaign, there were a lot of things that didn't exist in terms of helping people be able to augment their experiences. For example, like muting was still very new and didn't work very well. Um, Blocking also on Twitter at least wasn't really great. But people were asking for things like keyword blocking, which we got 2 years later. So why did it take 2 years, right? So thinking of what would it have been like during that moment if people had had some more basic tools, that would have made things a lot better. Does that solve harassment? No, it doesn't. But I'm interested again in seeing where design can help alleviate these spaces and these pain points. And so as an artist and as a designer, that's what I'm interested in is being able to build these small, quick things that exist as provocations. Some of my other talks, I show like wireframes I've made of Twitter of how to improve it. And I made those in 2014 and 2015. And I've gotten emails from Twitter's design team over the years of actually how helpful that is when people do public things like that, because they can bring those internal and advocate for those changes because they see it, because they can say someone else is requesting this. This is how they're requesting it. Look, like they're agreeing with us. And so it provides actually a form of advocacy, which is something I think a lot about. So that's kind of where I see it. It's not so much that like when I propose something that I think everything is going to be great, which is why I call TR-Arcade one small band-aid for one very small cut. But even still, if we can fix even the smallest things, isn't that a nice I guess one brick in a road towards making things better.
Thank you so much. That's fantastic, Mira. Do you want to ask the next question?
Yeah, sure. Caroline, thank you for your amazing presentation. We have a question from Matt. He also wants to thank you for your fantastic presentation. And he's asking, as an aspiring UX designer myself, I wanted to know where you recommend to start learning more about critical design for someone just getting a grip on the industry. Do you have any specific book or database suggestions?
Totally. Thank you so much for that. I have an essay I wrote on feminist dataset that's called Making Critical Ethical Art. Let me just pull up the link for you. So I have a lot of, sorry, it's called Making Critical Ethical Software. So I just have a lot of citations in there that I would definitely recommend checking out. That's always a good place, I would say, to get started. I don't know if I see a chat option.
We turned off the chat because of the
Oh
Zoom
yeah.
bombing we're having.
Let me just like type my answer. Here we go. So Matt should see it and all of you should see it now. I would definitely get started there. There's a nice, delightful little thin book on critical design that is a really good a really good way to get started. I would also recommend reading about speculative design. And I would also recommend trying to read as much as you can about how like the design of tools affects different people outside of like the country or region that you're in. And so I would suggest reading like a lot of tech reporting and a lot of tech criticism for that. Yeah, that would be my recommendation.
Thank you. Sophia says, I love your various works. I'm wondering if you could talk about your process, specifically how you identify issues you want to address, and then how you build a project around them.
Oh, that's such a great question as well. I just sort of go based off what I'm interested in. I think the big thing that I do, and I would recommend this to everyone, is I try to be very humble in my process, where if I have an idea, I am trying to see who else has had that idea, but then who also else has had an adjacent idea. And how is mine different? How is it similar? And how can I learn from them? So I spend a lot of time just researching. I spend a lot of time emailing academics, advocacy people at places like the Mozilla Foundation or Amnesty, of like looking through conferences like Republica and the Internet Freedom Festival and MozFest, of who is there and what are they talking about, and then going and looking at those different groups' work. And so for me, I always try to cast a really wide net of who is doing academic research, who is doing policy or advocacy based work, who is doing designer community based work. And so I spent a lot of time talking to people and emailing people and asking them if they'll talk to me. Another tip is to reach out to people that work at different funding organizations. So like the Ford Foundation or the Rockefeller Foundation, and see if they'll tell you about any of the people that they're funding, because they love to talk about the projects they're funding. And so I look across places like, again, Internet Freedom, or public infrastructure. So there's different program officers that cover different things. And so those program officers will look at, for example, Omidyar has like reimagining capitalism as one. And so if your project is even like remotely thinking about that, you can just email them, and then sometimes they'll get back to you and be like, oh, great, well, you would really love this person's project. So yeah, I spend a lot of time researching pretty much, and talking to people.
Catherine thanks you for your great presentation and is wondering, what is your view on the effects of technology on democracy and political organizing?
Oh wow, that's like all these are great questions. I think it's like a double-edged sword. I think it's a really great space for like people to come together that would maybe normally not meet each other. But I also think at times like technology can make it too easy for certain ideas that are either dangerous, malicious, or not very well thought out to really spread very quickly. I think also technology sometimes can make certain like people or ideas feel bigger or more important than they actually are, versus like the people that are actually doing the hard work. What I mean by that is, again, there are a lot of community organizers that are out there, a lot of community groups that are working on really important issues, but they may have a tweet that doesn't go viral the way that someone who is just really good at Twitter will have a post go viral. So there's like a difference between like a thought leader at times and a researcher. And I think sometimes social media makes it much harder to find the people actually doing the good work, the hard work, the work that is like waking up every day and thinking on a very local level and trying to work and advocate for their communities. And what we end up seeing is, you know, the hot takes or the op-eds about the state of the world. So I think that, you know, it's twofold. But then again, this is sometimes how we are able to find and see things that are outside of our immediate circle or filter bubble. So it's, you know, it's both.
Sophia has the second question, which
Yeah.
is, how do you ensure your band-aids are received as a provocation, ultimately leading to some help or change, and are not co-opted as a quick fix, which might appease people and remove motivation to make the larger needed change?
Oh, that's a really good question. Well, the thing is if you're designing a Band-Aid, it really can't go beyond a Band-Aid. So like with feminist data sets, someone was like, well, if you make this feminist language model, then Facebook can use it and they're going to fix stuff. And I was like, that's not how feminism works. Like you can't fix Facebook with one project, right? For example, or, you know, with TRK, it can't be a true alternative to Mechanical Turk because we don't process payment on there. So like, but it is designed and the code can be used by anyone. It can be used by any research lab. So if a research lab wants to handle setting up paying people, they can fork our open source code and build their own version of it so they don't have to use Mechanical Turk. But also like in some cases with TRK, like this is something I've really wanted to explore as a research project, which is at what point would it scale up? Would it stop being equitable? So how does scale involve in this? And that would sort of come at when can you not ensure quality? So like it's a provocation, but if you sat down and really tried to make it into its own startup, it would fail for a variety of reasons. It would fail because of capitalism. But a lot of my projects you really can't scale up, and that's kind of the beauty. That's why they exist as like metaphors or band-aids.
Our next question is curious about how you think about process design, such as in your feminist data set project.
Totally. I just, you know, I think like to some people, feminist data set seems like a traditional research project and not an art project. But the context, I think, of where I place the project it sort of helps what it's like. That's sort of what determines it as an art project, I would say. So like I'm not a pedantic person when it comes to what is defining art. I mean, I just gave y'all a whole presentation on like how design could be art. But a lot of that is like with some traditional visual artists, like people get very hung up on what art is, and my work is not that. It is sort of the direct opposite. Um, but I think a lot about it as like a form of public engagement and public education as art. And I think that that is an under discussed and underutilized part of North American, particularly US based spaces. It is like an underutilized and underfunded part of like the artistic space, right? And so in the US in particular, there's such a focus on artifacts, and my work is very anti-artifact in that way. But I really am influenced by how I see technologists make open source art, where how they will write code and the output will be software. And the output may be something like a series of interesting GIFs, but the real work is actually the fact that they made their own code to do that thing. So like Zach Lieberman's work with open frameworks, the art may be the GIFs you see, but I think the real art is actually the fact that he made this open source tool that anybody can use. So like the process is more like the art, I guess, will come from documenting it and of making something like a book, perhaps. But I don't know, there's just a lot to learn. And so I'm interested in what is experimental and exploratory research, and art is a good way to describe that.
Fantastic. An anonymous attendee asks, does your research tend to come before the making and production of artifacts, or does it happen simultaneously? At what point do you stop researching?
That's a really good question. So I never stop researching, but but it comes sort of at the same time. So I guess the thing to always keep in mind is like I was trained in photography before I was trained in research, even though as a photographer and photojournalist, you are trained in journalism at the same time. But like I, you know, was an undergrad photography major. And so I often like articulate or think of things already in a visual way to describe what I'm thinking. So a lot of work that I do when this is in a lot of my far right analysis and memes analysis, is I end up making graphs to try to describe what I'm talking about. But by graphs, I mean, I make things like matrices, or I make flow charts describing how an idea moves or how groups are separate from each other. Because sometimes the way to describe complexities is to just draw a map, right? Sometimes it's best to say like, this idea is harmful because it sits in this quadrant of like the harmful matrix because it's these shades of harmful. And this is now how you see it, of how they're actually different. It's kind of the way that when you're doing qualitative research, you group answers together. And sometimes you have to map or you have to code them, right? And coding means you're just sorting them and you're grouping them. And sometimes it's just easier to do that by color and sometimes by hand. And so what if you printed all of that out, cut them up, code them by hand, and then you physically looked at them? Sometimes you see things much better. So even though what you're looking at is still text, you've added this visual element. So for me, a lot of this stuff all comes together because my brain is constantly just looking at them and thinking of just like it's always processing data. And in some cases, I think like a lot of research will go like years and years of research will like manifest sometimes into like one art project, but that's sort of not the end of it. It's just I've been thinking and like turning stuff over in my head a lot. So I guess there's no easy answer to that. But I'm also like, I think this is where my work differs from traditional artists in the sense of like, I try to ask myself, like, why am I doing this and why am I the person? And should I be the person doing this? So I either will approach something from a place of self-portrait. So I've been working on a series of projects with Anna Riddler about climate change and climate grief. The image you see behind me is from that project. So I've been photographing cypress trees in my native Louisiana. I'm from there, many generations from the South. But like, I wouldn't feel comfortable going and doing a project in a country that I had no ties to about climate change, for example, because I don't think I'm the person to do that. And I don't think my interpretation of that adds anything to the conversation. So I try to really think about that. I started looking at online harassment because I was really interested in online political, online political movements. And so I've sort of stayed in the online harassment realm since there. But so like my work of thinking about harassment comes from the fact that it is like a material I spend a lot of time looking at. But then also just as like a femme on the internet, I've been harassed. So it's sometimes a mix of self-portrait in a way, because I reflect on my own harassment. I give free security advice to people who are harassed. So I spend a lot of time thinking about that. And then I do qualitative and quantitative research. But yeah, the thing I ask myself often is, what do I add or what do I take away? And in some cases, when it comes to things like harm and violence on the internet, I know that I have something to add because it's what I spend so much time doing. But for example, I wouldn't feel comfortable doing an art project about harassment in Canada unless I was working with someone or a group in Canada, because I don't think, even though we share a continent, I'm not Canadian and I can't really speak to any experience of what it is like to try to dissect anything from that perspective.
Thank you. So there's no other questions in Q&A box. I'll give a pause if people have a final kind of burning question they want to ask. But in the meantime, are there any other upcoming projects that you would like to direct people towards and other places where people can see your work?
Sure. So I have 2 things coming out, well, 3 things coming out soon. Anna and I have sort of soft launched our project called Mechanized Cacophony. So this was using found imagery, and it was us just reflecting on grief and isolation during COVID while we were doing this bigger project, which is still ongoing. And that's launching soon. That's called The New Real with the Edinburgh Futures Institute. And our project within that is called Mechanized Cacophonies. I'm also working on a project about white supremacy on YouTube with the Photographers Gallery, and that's called Within the Terms and Conditions. And then in May, I'll be opening a digital solo show, my first, on what's called Architectures of Violence. And so it's looking at harm and harassment online. And so the piece from the Photographers Gallery will be there.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And maybe afterwards I can get those links to share them on our
Totally.
social media to
Yeah.
direct people towards. There's no more questions. So I guess we'll wrap up. Thank you so much, Caroline, for being here. Thank you everyone in the audience for being here. There were a few projects and names that Caroline spoke to of people from our speaker series who have previously spoken, and we have recordings available. So Mimi Onuaha's Missing Data Sets, you can check out that video. Caroline also mentioned Design Justice, and Sasha Costanza Chalk spoke earlier this year, so you can check out that video as well. And I want to welcome you all to join us for tomorrow's event on dark patterns and accessible tech with Chancey Fleet. And thank you, and please continue to come. We love having you, and thank you so much, Caroline. It was a pleasure.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you all for all the really fantastic questions. I really appreciate that.
Thank you so much. Have a great night, everybody. Bye.
Bye.